married Anna, a woman of his own tribe, and together they had raised a son, Tobias, whom they diligently instructed in the ways of God. Despite the hardships of exile, Tobit had managed to accumulate a modest fortune, a testament to his diligence and perhaps a touch of divine favor. He used his resources not for personal indulgence, but for the welfare of his fellow exiles, particularly those who had fallen into poverty and despair. Nineveh, a sprawling metropolis teeming with a multitude of peoples and beliefs. Watch this story in full. Subscribe, comment and like my channel, Green Mythology, for mythology and history. Gateway 2, the captivating worlds of ancient myth. Now watch the story in full please. The Book of Tobit, a tapestry of faith, family, and divine providence. Introduction. Shadows over Nineveh. The great city of Nineveh, once a beacon of Mesopotamian power and splendor, now stood cloaked in a perpetual twilight. The mighty Assyrian Empire, at its zenith not so long ago, had begun its slow descent, its grip on the conquered lands loosening ever so slightly. Among the many souls swept away from their ancestral homes during the brutal conquest of the northern kingdom of Israel resided a man named Tobit, a devout and righteous member of the tribe of Naphtali. Tobit carried within him the indelible memories of his homeland, the rolling hills of Galilee, the familiar scent of the olive groves, and the sacred grandeur of the temple in Jerusalem. Though years had passed since he was forcibly relocated to this foreign land, his heart remained tethered to the traditions and laws of his forefathers. He was a man of unwavering faith, a steadfast observer of the Mosaic law, even amidst the pervasive paganism of Nineveh. His life in exile was marked by a quiet dignity and an unwavering commitment to his faith. He had married Anna, a woman of his own tribe, and together they had raised a son, Tobias, whom they diligently instructed in the ways of God. Despite the hardships of exile, Tobit had managed to accumulate a modest fortune, a testament to his diligence and perhaps a touch of divine favor. He used his resources not for personal indulgence, but for the welfare of his fellow exiles, particularly those who had fallen into poverty and despair. Nineveh, a sprawling metropolis teeming with a multitude of peoples and beliefs, presented a constant challenge to Tobit's unwavering devotion. The air was thick with the smoke of foreign sacrifices, and the streets echoed with the chants of unfamiliar gods. Yet, Tobit remained steadfast, refusing to partake in the idolatrous practices that surrounded him. He clung to the ancient scriptures, finding solace and guidance in their timeless wisdom. One of Tobit's most defining characteristics was his profound respect for the dead. He believed it to be a sacred duty to ensure that the bodies of his fellow Israelites received a proper burial, even when the deaths were ignominious or their families were scattered. This act of piety, though seemingly simple, often placed him in considerable danger. The Assyrian authorities, wary of any display of solidarity among the exiled Israelites, viewed such acts with suspicion and often punished those who dared to defy the decrees. Despite the risks, Tobit persisted in his noble endeavor. Whenever he learned of an Israelite who had died without family or means, he would secretly retrieve the body, often under the cover of darkness, and ensure it was laid to rest according to Jewish custom. He saw it as an extension of his faith, a tangible expression of his love for his people and his reverence for the divine image in every human being. The shadow of blindness. The reign of Shalmaneser, the Assyrian king who had first brought Tobit to Nineveh, eventually gave way to that of his son, Sennacherib. While Sennacherib initially showed some favor towards Tobit, appointing him to the position of purveyor, allowing him to travel freely and conduct his affairs, this period of relative ease was not to last. Sennacherib, emboldened by his military successes, grew increasingly tyrannical and suspicious. He embarked on a campaign of terror against the Israelites, and Tobit's acts of charity, particularly his burial of the dead, soon drew the king's ire. When Sennacherib learned of Tobit's actions, he was enraged. He confiscated all of Tobit's possessions and issued a decree of death against him. Tobit, fearing for his life, was forced to flee with his wife and son, seeking refuge in hiding places known only to a few trusted individuals. For 50 days, they remained in hiding, their lives hanging precariously in the balance. However, the political landscape of Nineveh was ever shifting. Sennacherib was eventually assassinated by his own sons, Adramelech and Sharezer, who then fled to Armenia. His son Esarhaddon ascended to the throne, and a general amnesty was declared. With the change in leadership, Tobit felt it safe to return to his home in Nineveh. He was eventually restored to his former position and his possessions were returned. Yet, the ordeal had taken its toll, leaving him more cautious but no less committed to his faith and his people. It was during this time of relative peace that a seemingly insignificant incident would forever alter the course of Tobit's life. He had grown weary from his labors and the anxieties of the past. One day, after burying a dead man, he returned home and, feeling unclean, lay down to sleep by the wall of his courtyard. As he slept, some sparrows perched on the wall above him, and the droppings fell into his eyes. The bird droppings caused a severe inflammation, and despite seeking the best medical attention available in Nineveh, Tobit gradually lost his sight. The once vibrant world around him faded into a blurry haze, and eventually, he was plunged into complete darkness. This sudden and debilitating blindness was a profound shock to Tobit and his family. He, who had always been a pillar of strength and support, was now completely dependent on others. His once active life was reduced to the confines of his home, his days filled with the unsettling silence of darkness. Days of dependence and despair. The burden of caring for Tobit fell heavily upon Anna. She was a devoted wife, but the constant demands of tending to her blind husband, coupled with the anxieties of their reduced circumstances, began to wear her down. Tobit's blindness had not only robbed him of his sight but also of his ability to work and provide for his family. Their once comfortable life had dwindled, and Anna was forced to find ways to supplement their meager income. She took up spinning wool, working tirelessly to earn a few coins to keep them afloat. However, Tobit, confined to his darkened world, often grew suspicious and irritable. He struggled to comprehend their financial straits and sometimes accused Anna of dishonest dealings, believing she was keeping some of her earnings for herself. These accusations, though born out of his frustration and helplessness, deeply wounded Anna. She was working diligently to support them, and his unfounded suspicions added emotional strain to their already difficult situation. Arguments became more frequent in their household, the once harmonious rhythm of their lives disrupted by the shadow of Tobit's blindness. One day, Anna returned home with a young goat she had received as part of her payment for spinning. When Tobit heard the bleating of the goat, he immediately grew suspicious. "Where did you get this goat?" he demanded, his voice laced with suspicion. "Is it stolen? Return it to its rightful owner, for we should not partake in anything that is ill-gotten." Anna, weary of his constant accusations, retorted, "It was given to me as payment for my work. Do you still not believe me? Do you think I would steal?" Their argument escalated, and Tobit, in his despair and frustration, cried out to God. "O Lord," he prayed, his voice filled with anguish, "you are just, and all your judgments are righteous. Remember me, O Lord, and do not punish me for my sins and my ignorance, nor for the sins of my forefathers. For we have not obeyed your commandments, and therefore we have been scattered among the nations, subjected to reproach and captivity. And now, O Lord, deal with me according to your will. Command that I be released from this life, so that I may go to the eternal abode and not hear any more reproaches." In his suffering and despair, Tobit longed for death, seeing it as a release from his pain and the constant friction within his household. He felt abandoned and forgotten, his once vibrant faith now clouded by the darkness that enveloped his physical eyes. A parallel plea in Ecbatana. Far away in the city of Ecbatana, in the land of Media, another soul was also crying out in despair. Her name was Sarah, and she was a relative of Tobit. She had been married 7 times, but each of her husbands had died mysteriously on their wedding night, before the marriage could be consummated. A wicked demon, Asmodeus, was said to be the cause of these tragic deaths. He was consumed by a jealous rage and would not allow any man to possess Sarah. This curse had brought immense shame and sorrow upon Sarah and her family. She was ostracized by her community, viewed with suspicion and fear. The whispers and accusations followed her like a dark cloud. Some whispered that she was cursed, others that she had somehow brought this misfortune upon herself. The pain of losing 7 husbands, each filled with the promise of a new life, was compounded by the social stigma she endured. One day, after being harshly rebuked by a servant who accused her of being the cause of her husband's deaths, Sarah retreated to her upper room and poured out her heart to God. "O Lord," she prayed, her voice choked with tears, "you are just, and your judgments are righteous. Look upon my affliction, O Lord, and have mercy on me. For I have heard reproachful words, and I long to be released from this life. Command that I may die, so that I may no longer endure these insults." Like Tobit, Sarah felt utterly hopeless and longed for the release of death. She had endured unimaginable loss and was now burdened by the cruel judgment of her community. Unbeknownst to them, their prayers, uttered in different lands and born of different sorrows, were rising to the same compassionate God. A father's counsel and a hidden debt. As Tobit languished in his blindness, his thoughts often turned to his son, Tobias. He worried about his future and longed to impart to him the wisdom and values he had learned throughout his life. One day, he called Tobias to his side and spoke to him with a father's earnestness. "My son," Tobit began, his voice weak but filled with love, "when I die, bury me properly. Honor your mother, and do not abandon her as long as she lives. Do what pleases her, and do not grieve her spirit in any way. Remember, my son, that we were once poor, but God has blessed us. Therefore, be generous to the poor. Do not turn your face away from anyone in need, and God's face will not be turned away from you." He continued, imparting to Tobias the importance of righteousness, honesty, and chastity. He urged him to marry a woman from their own people and to avoid the company of the wicked. He emphasized the importance of prayer and almsgiving, reminding Tobias that these acts of piety could atone for sins and draw God's favor. Then, Tobit revealed a long-forgotten secret to his son. "My son," he said, "when I was still able to see, I deposited a large sum of silver with Gabriel, the son of Gabrias, in Rages of Media. The amount was 10 talents. Now, my son, when I die, take that money and use it as the Lord has directed you." Tobias was surprised to hear of this hidden wealth. He had no knowledge of this Gabriel or the journey to Media. He asked his father, "Father, how can I go to Media? I do not know the way." Tobit replied, "Seek out a trustworthy man, who can travel with you, and I will pay him his wages." Tobias began to search for a suitable companion for the long and arduous journey to Media. As he was leaving his house, he encountered a handsome young man standing before him, girded and ready for travel. The arrival of Azariah. The young man greeted Tobias courteously. "Young man," he said, "where are you going?" Tobias replied, "I am looking for a man to travel with me to Media." The young man responded, "I will go with you. I know the way well, and I have stayed with our brother Gabriel." Tobias was overjoyed to find such a seemingly capable and knowledgeable companion so readily. He asked, "What is your name?" The young man replied, "My name is Azariah, the son of Ananias, one of your relatives." Tobias was pleased to hear that his companion was also a member of their extended family. He went back to his father and told him about the young man he had found. Tobit was also pleased and asked to speak with Azariah. "Young man," Tobit said, "are you truly from our tribe and family?" Azariah assured him that he was. Tobit then asked, "Do you know the way to Media?" Azariah replied confidently, "Yes, I have traveled there many times, and I know Gabriel well. I can take you directly to him." Tobit, feeling reassured by Azariah's knowledge and apparent honesty, agreed to hire him as Tobias's guide and companion. He promised to pay him a fair wage upon their return. Tobit then instructed Tobias to prepare for the journey, providing him with the necessary provisions and a letter of introduction for Gabriel. Before Tobias departed, Tobit gave him one final piece of advice. "My son," he said, "fear the Lord in all that you do. Remember his commandments, and do not stray from his ways. Pray for a safe journey and for the Lord's blessing upon your endeavors." With his father's blessings and Azariah by his side, Tobias set out on the long and perilous journey to Media, his heart filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. Little did he know that his companion was not merely a relative but a divine messenger sent to guide and protect him. The river Tigris and a prophetic encounter. The journey to Media was long and arduous, taking them through unfamiliar landscapes and past strange towns. Azariah, with his knowledge of the terrain and the people they encountered, proved to be an invaluable guide. He was also a wise and thoughtful companion, engaging Tobias in conversations that broadened his understanding of the world and deepened his faith. One day, as they were traveling alongside the Tigris River, Tobias decided to wash his feet in the flowing water. As he stepped into the river, a large fish suddenly leaped out of the water and tried to swallow his foot. Tobias, startled and frightened, cried out to Azariah, "Grab it." Azariah commanded, "Do not let it get away." Tobias, mustering his courage, seized the fish and dragged it onto the bank. It was a large and powerful creature, thrashing wildly. Azariah then instructed Tobias to cut it open and remove its gall, heart, and liver, telling him to keep these organs carefully. Tobias was puzzled by this strange request. "Why do you want me to keep these parts of the fish?" he asked. Azariah explained, "The heart and liver of this fish, if burned, can drive away demons and evil spirits. And the gall is useful for curing blindness." Tobias, though still curious, followed Azariah's instructions, carefully preserving the organs as directed. This encounter with the fish, seemingly a random event, was in fact a crucial step in the unfolding of God's plan for both Tobit and Sarah. As they continued their journey, Azariah spoke to Tobias about Sarah, Tobit's relative who lived in Ecbatana. He told Tobias about her beauty and her virtuous character, but also about the tragic fate of her 7 husbands, who had all died on their wedding night. Azariah then said to Tobias, "Listen to me, and I will tell you what to do. When you arrive in Ecbatana, go to Sarah. She is your relative, and you have a right to marry her. Do not be afraid of the demon, for the Lord has sent me to help you both." Tobias was hesitant. He had heard the stories about Sarah and the demon, and he was afraid that he too might meet the same fate as her previous husbands. But Azariah reassured him, saying, "Remember what I told you about the heart and liver of the fish. When you go to marry her, take the heart and liver and place them on burning coals. The smoke will drive the demon away, and he will never bother her again." Azariah's words filled Tobias with a newfound courage and hope. He had always respected his father's wishes, and the idea of marrying a relative from their own tribe appealed to him. The promise of divine protection through the use of the fish's organs gave him the confidence to proceed. Arrival in Ecbatana and a warm welcome. When Tobias and Azariah arrived in Ecbatana, they sought out Raguel, Sarah's father, who was also a close relative of Tobit. Raguel welcomed them warmly, recognizing Azariah as a relative he had met before. Raguel inquired about Tobit and his family, and Tobias recounted their story, including his father's blindness and the current circumstances. Raguel was deeply saddened to hear of Tobit's plight and embraced Tobias with affection, acknowledging their familial bond. Raguel then introduced Tobias to his wife, Edna, and the daughter, Sarah. Tobias was immediately struck by Sarah's beauty and grace, just as Azariah had described. She greeted him with kindness and respect. Raguel, noticing the connection between Tobias and Sarah, said to Tobias, "Young man, you are a relative of mine. It is right that you should marry my daughter. I have given her in marriage to 7 men, all of whom died on their wedding night. But now, be of good courage, for the Lord will protect you." Tobias, remembering Azariah's words, replied, "I have heard that she has been given in marriage to 7 men, and they all died. I am afraid to go in to her, lest I also die." Raguel, deeply concerned for Tobias, said, "My son, I know that you are a devout man. Trust in the Lord, and he will protect you. Then, Raguel called Sarah to him. My daughter, he said, come here. This young man is your cousin, from the family of your father. It is right that he should marry you. Tell us, do you consent? Sarah, her heart filled with a mixture of hope and trepidation, nodded her assent. Raguel then took Tobias's right hand and placed it in Sarah's right hand. He blessed them and prayed for God's protection and favor upon their union. He then instructed his servants to prepare a wedding feast, the wedding night and the vanquishing of Asmodeus. As the wedding feast commenced, Tobias remembered Azariah's instructions regarding the demon. When night fell and it was time for him to go into the bridal chamber with Sarah, he took the heart and liver of the fish from his pouch and placed them on burning coals. The smoke that rose from the burning organs had a powerful and immediate effect. The wicked demon Asmodeus, tormented by the smell, fled from the bridal chamber and was pursued by the angel Raphael, who had revealed his true identity to Tobias in private. Raphael caught the demon and bound him in the desert of Upper Egypt, ensuring he could no longer harm Sarah or her future husbands. Tobias, unaware of the spiritual battle that had just taken place, was filled with a sense of peace and relief. He knew that he had done as Azariah had instructed, and he trusted in God's protection. He then spoke to Sarah, who was understandably anxious and fearful. Sister, he said, get up, and let us pray that the Lord will have mercy on us and grant us his salvation. They both rose and prayed fervently for God's protection and blessing upon their marriage. They asked for a long and happy life together, filled with his grace. After their prayers, they lay down to sleep, their hearts filled with gratitude and hope. For the first time, Sarah was able to spend her wedding night without fear, knowing that the demon who had plagued her past was now vanquished. Joy and preparation for departure. The following morning, Raguel, filled with anxiety about Tobias's fate, sent a servant to check if he was still alive. When the servant returned with the joyful news that Tobias was well, Raguel was overjoyed. He praised God for his mercy and ordered a larger and more elaborate wedding feast to celebrate. Raguel, deeply grateful to Tobias for bringing joy back into his daughter's life, decided to keep him and Sarah in Ecbatana for 2 weeks. He insisted that Tobias not leave until half of his own possessions were given to him as a wedding gift. During this time, Tobias urged Azariah to go to Rages to retrieve the 10 talents of silver that his father had deposited with Gabael. Azariah readily agreed and set off on the journey. He met Gabael and informed him of Tobias's arrival and his marriage to Sarah. Gabael, overjoyed to hear from Tobit's son, brought out the sealed bag containing the 10 talents of silver and gave it to Azariah. After the 2 weeks of celebration were over, Tobias, Sarah, and Azariah prepared to return to Nineveh. Raguel and Edna showered them with blessings and gifts, including the other half of Raguel's possessions. They bid them farewell with tears of joy and wished them a safe journey home. The return journey and approaching Nineveh. The journey back to Nineveh was filled with anticipation and joy. Tobias was eager to see his parents and share the good news of his marriage and the newfound prosperity. Sarah, leaving her home and family, was filled with a mixture of sadness and excitement about her new life with Tobias. Azariah continued to be the guide and protector, ensuring their safety along the way. As they drew near to Nineveh, Azariah reminded Tobias of the fish's gall and its power to cure blindness. When you arrive home, Azariah instructed, go immediately to your father. Take the gall of the fish and apply it to his eyes. Tell him that this will heal him. Tobias, remembering his father's despair and longing for sight, was filled with hope. He eagerly anticipated the moment when he could restore his father's vision. The healing of Tobit and family reunion. As they approached Nineveh, Tobias went ahead of Sarah and Azariah to inform his parents of their arrival. Anna, his mother, was overjoyed to see him, her heart filled with relief after the long and anxious wait. She ran to him and embraced him tightly, tears streaming down her face. Tobit, still blind, could only hear the joyful commotion. He asked, my son, is it truly you? Have you returned safely? Tobias replied, Yes, Father, I have returned, and I have brought Sarah with me. She is your son's wife. Tobit, though unable to see, was overjoyed to hear this news. He asked to be led to the gate so that he could greet his daughter-in-law. Anna took his hand, and they went to meet Sarah. When Tobit reached Sarah, he blessed her and welcomed her into their home. He was filled with gratitude to God for answering his prayers and bringing his son back safely with a wife. Then, Tobias remembered Azariah's instructions. He took the gall of the fish and applied it to his father's eyes. He told him, Be of good cheer, Father. This medicine will heal you. Tobit felt a stinging sensation in his eyes, but he remained still as Tobias held his eyelids open. Suddenly, a white film began to peel away from his eyes, and his sight was restored. Tobit could see his son, his daughter-in-law, and his beloved Anna for the first time in years. He was overwhelmed with joy and gratitude. He fell to his knees and praised God with all his heart. The entire household rejoiced at this miraculous healing. Anna wept tears of joy, and Sarah embraced her father-in-law with affection. Their home, once filled with the darkness of despair, was now radiant with the light of hope and happiness. The revelation of the angel. After the celebrations had subsided, Tobit turned to Tobias and Azariah. My son, he said, what wages shall we give this holy man who has guided you and brought you back safely? He deserves a generous reward. Tobias agreed, and they discussed how much they should offer Azariah. Azariah, who had been silent throughout the discussion, then spoke. I am Raphael, he said, his voice filled with a celestial resonance, one of the 7 holy angels who present the prayers of the saints and enter into the presence of the glory of the Holy One. Tobit and Tobias were both struck with awe and fear at this revelation. They fell to the ground in reverence. Raphael continued, Do not be afraid. Peace be with you. Bless God forever. As for me, when I was with you, it was by God's will. Bless him and sing his praises. It seemed to you that I ate and drank with you, but that was only an appearance. Now, give thanks to God, for I am ascending to him who sent me. With these words, Raphael ascended into heaven before the very eyes. Tobit and Tobias remained prostrate on the ground, filled with wonder and gratitude for the divine intervention in their lives. They understood now that their prayers had been heard and that God had sent his angel to guide and protect them. Tobit's song of praise. After Raphael's departure, Tobit, his heart overflowing with gratitude, composed a beautiful hymn of praise to God. He acknowledged God's justice and mercy, recognizing that their suffering had been a consequence of their sins and the sins of their forefathers. He praised God for his healing power, for restoring his sight and bringing joy back into their lives. He also praised God for his faithfulness to his promises and his ultimate plan for the restoration of Israel. Tobit's hymn was a testament to his unwavering faith and his deep understanding of God's character. He called upon all the nations to acknowledge God's greatness and to worship him with reverence and awe. Tobit's final counsel and the enduring legacy. Tobit lived for many years after his sight was restored. He witnessed the joy of Tobias and Sarah raising a large and happy family. He lived to the age of 112 years, and in his final years, he called Tobias to his side once more to impart his final counsel. My son, Tobit said, his voice now frail but still filled with wisdom, leave Nineveh, for I know that this wicked city will be destroyed. The word of the Lord spoken by the prophets will surely come to pass. Go to Media, my son, for there you will find peace and safety. Live according to the law of Moses, and serve the Lord with all your heart. Tobias heeded his father's words. After Tobit's death, he buried him with honor and then moved with his wife and children to Media, to the home of Raguel. He lived a long and prosperous life there, and he always remembered his father's teachings and the miraculous events that had shaped their family's destiny. Tobias lived to the age of 99 years, and before he died, he heard of the destruction of Nineveh, just as his father had prophesied. He rejoiced that God's justice had prevailed. The story of Tobit is a timeless tale of faith, perseverance, and the unwavering love of God. It reminds us that even in the darkest of times, when despair threatens to overwhelm us, divine providence is at work, guiding and protecting those who remain faithful to Him. It highlights the importance of family, the power of prayer, the virtue of charity, and the enduring hope that lies in trusting in God's plan, even when it is beyond our understanding. The legacy of Tobit and his family continues to inspire generations with its message of hope, resilience, and the unwavering belief in a God who hears and answers the prayers of His people.